Elizabeth Harper woke before dawn with the taste of rain in the air and a chill that had nothing to do with the thermostat. Outside, the streets of Charlotte were silent and slick, a soft drizzle blurring the streetlights into halos. It was 3:17 a.m. She reached out instinctively for Caleb Owens, the familiar weight that should have been beside her, and found only cool sheets. A thin ribbon of light bled from the living room where a lamp had been left on. From the hallway came the low, urgent cadence of a voice she should have known by heart, Caleb on the phone. She had never heard him take a secret call at such an hour. Barefoot and careful, Elizabeth cracked the bedroom door and leaned, listening to the words that folded her world in half. "Yes, honey, Gavin has the passport ready. He'll deliver it tomorrow." Elizabeth signed Ava's travel papers. "She thinks it's just to visit my mom. Friday we leave you, me and Ava." Her chest slammed against her ribs like someone hitting a drum. Caleb, the man who had kissed her at the altar, who had held their daughter the first time she breathed in the world, was planning to take Ava away. Betrayal rose in her like bile. She could hear herself counting heartbeats, feel the heat of nausea, the sudden freezing of blood in her veins. Part of her wanted to explode into the hallway and tear him from the phone, to fling the truth into the room like broken glass. But another deeper instinct, the raw, animal certainty of a mother, told her to stay silent and watch. Caleb returned to bed as if nothing had happened. Elizabeth pretended to sleep, tears seeping silently into her pillow. Memories once warm and ordinary weekend breakfasts, the way he'd laughed when Ava smeared pancake batter on her chin, the soft press of his hand on hers at night, soured like milk in her mouth. A decision crystallized inside her. She would not be a wife undone. She would become a guardian who would move heaven and earth to protect her child. By morning, Caleb left for work with practiced casualness. Elizabeth sat at the kitchen table, a mug of coffee gone cold at her elbow, staring at herself in the dark window as if she could see a stranger behind the glass. Her eyes were puffy, but there was a new, quiet heartfulness that surprised her even as she felt it settle in. She pulled out her phone and scrolled until she found the number of an old college friend, someone she trusted more than anyone who still knew both her past and her present. Victor Hale, a private investigator who'd once been reliable in the way only old friends can be. He answered on the second ring. Victor arrived 2 hours later, parking a battered gray sedan on the street outside Elizabeth's Charlotte residence. He had aged, the edges of his face softened by time, but there was an alertness about him, a steady, practical focus Elizabeth needed. She ushered him inside, closed the door like a seal, and told him everything at the kitchen table. The call, the false papers, the mistress, the plan to leave for Miami in 3 days. Victor listened, pen on notepad, eyes moving over every detail. He asked about routines, pockets of solitude, names and places. He explained calmly that what they needed was proof, irrefutable, on-the-record evidence of the passports, the forger, and the woman with Caleb. After that, Elizabeth lived a double life. By day, she was the mother who kissed Ava's forehead, who packed Cheerios in a sippy cup and smoothed down her daughter's soft dark hair. She kept the apartment the way Caleb liked it, preserved the comfortable illusion of normalcy. By night, she met Victor in a dim coffee shop near Freedom Park or in the back of his car, learning how to watch without being watched, how to collect small things that would otherwise seem meaningless, a lunch receipt, a photograph, a license plate. She learned to read the slack of a jaw and the way a hand trembled when a lie had been told. One Wednesday night, Victor's lens caught Caleb entering a worn industrial building with a brown envelope under his arm. 30 minutes later, Caleb emerged, still carrying the envelope. The next day, when Caleb was at work, Elizabeth slipped into his study and found the envelope in a bottom drawer. Inside were 3 plane tickets with names that weren't his, one for Caleb, one for Amanda Turner, and one for Maria Fernanda Guzman. The flight was scheduled for Friday to Miami. Ava's name, her small, ordinary name, did not appear. Instead, a stranger's, and that foreign name had been written on official-looking papers. Elizabeth felt the world tilt. 72 hours. That was all the time Caleb gave them. Her hands, which had once held a baby bottle and a bedtime storybook, now trembled with a fierce, focused kind of clarity. They had proof. The countdown had begun. Victor's next move was methodical. If they could identify Amanda Turner, the woman Caleb met in secret, and link her to the passports and to Gavin, the tiger, the forger with a known history. They would have grounds to act before the plane left. Victor trailed Caleb to an uptown Charlotte cafe and waited, camera ready. Through a narrow window, he watched a tall blonde approach Caleb's table. The way she moved had the casual assurance of someone used to attention. They hugged, laughed, and at one point Caleb slipped her an envelope. Victor managed a series of photos. The exchange, Caleb's hand on Amanda's, the flicker of a smile they once shared. Over the next days, Victor dug into the underworld that made disappearing possible. He found traces that led to Gavin, the tiger, a man whispered about in police blotters and on the margins of crime forums, a forger who'd made a small fortune slipping people across borders with manufactured identities. He was careful and elusive. His deliveries never followed a pattern. Victor told Elizabeth quietly, "We have to intercept the final delivery." They set the trap for Friday. Victor coordinated with a handful of officers from the Charlotte police who were willing to act swiftly and discreetly. 2 would pose as airline attendants. 2 more would blend into the crowd of travelers, and Victor and Elizabeth would observe from a car parked near the curb of the Charlotte Douglas International Airport. Elizabeth sat on the passenger side, rain beating on the windshield, gripping the strap of her handbag so tightly the leather creased under her fingers. She felt hollowed and lit at the same time, dread braided with a fierce, almost joyous determination. Caleb left the apartment early, carrying Ava in a carrier and telling Elizabeth they were visiting his mother for the weekend. Elizabeth forced a small, practiced smile, hugged Ava, and smoothed a stray curl from the child's forehead as Caleb waved and closed the door. As the front door clicked shut, she let herself fall to her knees on the doormat and cried in the small, private way of someone who is about to walk into a battle. At 9:14 a.m., the 3 of them moved into the terminal. Caleb wore a crisp white shirt and a brown leather jacket. Ava clutched a well-worn stuffed bear. Amanda followed a few steps behind, attempting to hide behind sunglasses and a hastily done bun, her expensive tracksuit and scarf looking slightly out of place against the humidity of the morning. Through binoculars from the car, Elizabeth saw every small gesture as if for the first time. The way Caleb's jaw tightened when he thought no one was looking, how Amanda's fingers brushed a passport when she thought they were alone. Victor's voice came through the radio with quiet steadiness. "They're inside. Wait for the signal. Don't act until we have them with the documents." Undercover officers had taken positions. A plan was in motion to catch them with the fake passports in hand and keep Ava safe. Inside the terminal, Caleb waited near the large panoramic windows that looked over the tarmac. He spread the forged passport across a table, a brittle photograph of a child who was, in fact, Ava, but the name read Maria Fernanda Guzman, daughter of invented parents Ryan Grant and Claire Miller. 10 minutes before boarding, Ava asked for juice and reached out for her mother in the crowd. Caleb tried to distract her while Amanda's fingers fidgeted with the edge of an envelope. Elizabeth's breath was so shallow she felt it in her throat. Victor checked his evidence again. Photos of the forger, images of cash exchanged, the plane tickets, the recording Elizabeth had captured hours before when she had pretended to sleep. Everything fit together like a dark jigsaw. Then Caleb made a move that showed how professional he believed he had become. He leaned toward Amanda in a whisper, and they split up. Caleb took Ava toward the men's restroom while Amanda drifted toward the gate. Victor's voice hit the radio. "They're splitting. He's testing an exit." Caleb was trying to find another way out, the way people who know the system's cracks try to exploit them. Elizabeth grabbed Victor's arm so hard her nails bit into his skin. "He's not giving that ticket away," she said. Her voice was a blade. She was right. In Caleb's black backpack, tucked beneath diapers and a small stack of crackers, was another forged passport with a different false name, a backup plan meant to be even harder to trace. It all happened in a flurry after that. An undercover officer intercepted Amanda at the gate while another moved toward Caleb. Victor, signal given, stepped forward with a photo of the passport. Caleb's face went pale as the corner of his plan was exposed. Officers closed in gently but firmly, separating him from Ava and taking the passports as evidence. Amanda's sunglasses slipped and she stopped pretending not to care. The noise of the terminal, the screech of a trolley, the murmur of announcements. receded into a drumbeat as Elizabeth stepped from the car, hands shaking, and gathered Ava to her chest. Later, in the quiet of Elizabeth's Charlotte home, after police reports were filed and officers had taken statements, she sat with Ava asleep against her shoulder and allowed herself to finally breathe. The relief was not triumphant. It was exhausted and fragile, threaded with the knowledge that this battle was not over. There would be hearings in Charlotte Family Court, questions to answer, and a long road to reclaim the ordinary calm that had been stolen. But for now, Ava was safe, and Elizabeth had learned how powerful her resolve could be. She had walked through fear and returned changed. The woman who had been knocked awake at 3:17 a.m. was still there, but she had been remade by the shape of what she would do for her child, fierce, resourceful, and unafraid to face the lie with a quiet, relentless courage. Before Caleb Owens could reach the service corridor, Victor Hale's radio burst to life. Team Alpha, suspect with a minor heading toward restricted access. Intervene immediately. Victor broke into a sprint, Elizabeth Harper beside him, her lungs burning as they dashed through the crowded terminal at Charlotte Douglas International Airport. The sleek glass walls reflected flashing lights from airport security, and the air pulsed with the sudden tension of unfolding chaos. Two agents moved in on Amanda Turner, just as she placed her bag on the counter. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a question about your ticket," one officer said smoothly. Amanda stiffened, her voice sharp but shaky. "What? I'm late. What is this?" At the same time, Caleb pushed toward a maintenance door, clutching Ava to his chest. A third officer blocked his path, hand hovering near his holster. "Mr. Owens, you need to come with us." Caleb froze, eyes darting. He clutched Ava tighter, a flicker of desperation passing over his face. Then, out of the shadows of the hallway, Elizabeth appeared. She walked forward slowly, her cheeks streaked with tears, but her voice low and steady, every word a dagger. "You really thought you could beat me?" Caleb's voice cracked as he tightened his hold on Ava. "Don't come near her, she's my daughter." Elizabeth's reply cut through the chaos. "You don't even deserve to say her name." Two officers advanced carefully, one reaching out for Ava. Gently, he lifted the frightened child from Caleb's arms. Confused, Ava's small voice rang out, "Mommy." Elizabeth rushed forward, scooping her daughter close, pressing her face against the child's hair, breathing in the scent of shampoo and innocence. She held Ava as though the world itself might crumble if she let go, and in that moment, the embrace was her entire existence. Behind them, Caleb was wrestled to the floor, his shouts echoing uselessly against the walls. Abigail, watching the monitors from the far side of the terminal, fainted as officers handcuffed her. What unfolded looked cinematic, but it was no movie. It was Elizabeth's life, salvaged through blood, tears, and a mother's unrelenting will. The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and grit. Elizabeth not only had to face betrayal but also the labyrinth of the legal process. Endless interviews with social workers, emergency hearings at Charlotte Family Court, and protective measures for Ava. The little girl, sensing the absence of her father, clung to her mother at night, whispering, "When's Daddy coming back?" Elizabeth would hold her close, stroking her hair and whisper back, "You have me, my flower. No one will ever take you from me again." Caleb and Amanda sat in jail cells, separated but equally cornered. Their lawyers scrambled to twist the narrative. Caleb had rights as a father, they argued, and simply wanted a fresh start away from what they painted as a suffocating marriage. But the evidence, a forged passport naming Ava as Maria Fernanda Guzman, the Miami plane tickets, cash payments to Gavin the Tiger, and the midnight phone call Elizabeth had recorded, was a fortress of proof. Victor's diligence paid off. The prosecution used his files, photos, and testimony to construct a case so solid it left the defense gasping for cracks. Elizabeth's life, however, remained taut with vigilance. She changed Ava's school, replaced every lock in her Charlotte residence, and began sleeping with the bedroom door locked and a kitchen knife by her bed. Not because she feared Caleb's return, but as a reminder of how far she was willing to go to keep Ava safe. When the first court hearing arrived, Charlotte Family Court was packed wall to wall. Journalists, curious neighbors, even distant relatives, all craving drama. Headlines later screamed, Mother Foyle's husband's escape with daughter, and justice or revenge. Elizabeth entered the courtroom in a simple navy blouse and black slacks. Nothing flashy, but she carried herself with a quiet strength that drew every eye. Caleb, on the other hand, appeared diminished, unshaven, his once sharp features dulled by weeks in custody. Amanda sat with her chin tilted up, still trying to wear arrogance like armor. The prosecutor laid out every piece of evidence: photographs, recordings, sworn testimonies. Each revelation seemed to weigh heavier on the room, even causing the judge to shake his head in visible disapproval. Then Elizabeth took the stand. She rose, inhaled deeply, and spoke with a calm that silenced the entire chamber. "I loved this man for 10 years. I was his wife, his friend, his partner. I never imagined that the same man who placed our daughter in my arms after she was born would one day try to take her away from me. Caleb, you didn't just betray me as a wife, you tried to destroy me as a mother. That is unforgivable. I am not here for revenge. I am here for justice. For my daughter, for the woman I was, and for the woman I am becoming." The courtroom was still, the weight of her words pressing into every corner. Even the judge looked away for a moment, visibly moved. Caleb's lawyer stumbled through claims of emotional stress and even painted Amanda as a victim, but the evidence crushed every excuse. When Amanda was called to testify, Elizabeth insisted on facing her directly. With chains clinking at her wrists, Amanda tried to hold Elizabeth's gaze. Elizabeth spoke before the judge intervened. "Did you really think he loved you?" For the first time, Amanda's mask broke. She dropped her eyes and sobbed, the realization of her complicity flooding in too late. The final ruling came swiftly. Caleb Owens was sentenced to 16 years in prison for attempted international kidnapping, document forgery, and conspiracy. Amanda Turner received 11 years for complicity and fraud. Not long after, Gavin the Tiger was arrested as well. Elizabeth barely cared about their punishment. What mattered was Ava, safe, warm, and forever in her arms. Back at home, Elizabeth faced the battlefield of memories. The kitchen where Caleb once brewed morning coffee, the bedroom where they had shared vows of love, Ava's toys scattered beside documents that nearly stole her away. Instead of shrinking under the weight, Elizabeth began to transform. She cleared out furniture, repainted walls, and rebuilt her Charlotte residence into a sanctuary that belonged solely to her and her daughter. Victor stood by her side through it all. Their bond was not romantic but forged in fire, the kind of loyalty that comes from shared war. He helped file motions, guided her through every legal step, and even accompanied her to choose a lawyer she could trust. One quiet night, after Ava had fallen asleep, Elizabeth whispered to him, "You saved my life." Victor shook his head softly. "You saved your own. I just showed you the way." That was the night Elizabeth chose to turn her scars outward into strength for others. She joined support groups for women who had faced betrayal and manipulation, telling her story with honesty and courage. "No one expects to wake up betrayed," she would say, "but every woman should go to sleep knowing she's strong enough to rise again." With the help of child psychologists, she ensured Ava's world remained stable. She never poisoned her daughter's mind against her father, simply telling her, "He's far away, but you are safe." Slowly, Ava stopped asking for him altogether. 3 months later, Elizabeth was granted full, permanent custody of Ava. The paper she held in her hands wasn't just legal proof, it was the seal of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every tear shed. On the day of the ruling, she took Ava to Freedom Park. The sun was sharp and golden, the air alive with children's laughter. They rode bikes, Ava's training wheels clattering against the pavement. Elizabeth laughed freely for the first time in years. As she sat on a bench, Ava running toward the slide, Victor approached with an envelope from the court, the last piece of official documentation. Elizabeth read it through, then looked at him and said, "Now it's really over." He smiled. "No, Elizabeth. It's just beginning." And he was right. She was no longer the woman who once cried silently beside a husband who betrayed her. She had been remade into proof that survival is not just about enduring pain, but about transforming it. Elizabeth began to write. Her first published article, "The The day they almost took my daughter and how I reclaimed my life went viral, reaching mothers across the country. Invitations followed to speak at conferences, to share her story with women seeking courage. Each time she spoke, she did not relive her trauma. She dismantled it, piece by piece, turning it into a lantern for others. Caleb never wrote her from prison, never asked forgiveness. Amanda, a year later, sent a letter of apology. Elizabeth read it, folded it neatly, and put it away. Not all pain deserved a response. Some things could only be buried with distance. Today, Ava is 5. She swims with fearless joy, draws lopsided hearts in crayon, and writes her mother's name in bright, colorful markers. Each hug is a victory, not over Caleb or Amanda, but over fate, fear, and silence. And Elizabeth Harper blooms. You just heard this one from Stories by Sue. If it resonated, don't forget to like and subscribe. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments. I'd love to hear. Thanks for watching.